Good evening and welcome to the Redwood Library in Athenæum. My name is Benedict Leck. I'm the Executive Director, and we are pleased to welcome you for tonight's presentation. Howard Newman is the man. You all know him well, and he is going to discuss his newly designed and fabricated processional scepter for the Yale Faculty of Arts and Sciences. Now, many of you have known Howard for decades. He is a Newporter. He's a painter, a sculptor, and metal worker, and he specializes in the restoration of fine art objects, sculpture, and antique mechanisms. He received his training at Miami University of Ohio in architecture, anthropology, and sociology, and also at the Rhode Island School of Design in industrial design, silversmithing, and metal sculpture. Very learned person. Following a year as a Fulbright scholar in Italy in 1971, Newman returned to America, where he continued making bronze sculptures, paintings, and drawings. His work is in the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and he has been represented by galleries and dealers in New York, Palm Beach, Los Angeles, and Boston. Howard and his wife Mary live and work in Newport in a house filled with studios and workshops and all sorts of objects. I've been there. He's a collector like me. He's got stuff all over. So, Howard, welcome. We're very excited about this. I know everyone else is. And please welcome Howard Newman.
Hi, Benedict, and hello, everybody. I want to also these names I'm seeing. Thank you for coming. I want to thank Yale University for selecting us to design and create this unique object, and you, Benedict, and your wonderful staff for your graciousness in inviting and enthusiastically assisting us in creating this presentation. And to Yale alumnus Ross Kahn for his enthusiasm for showing how Mary and I created this new scepter for the Yale Faculty of Arts and Sciences. I also want to thank the fine craftspeople, engineers, machinists, and business people, many of whom you will meet in a few minutes, who took part in the creation of the scepter. So now, without any further ado, I'm going to connect you to my movie about this. In July 2019, I was contacted by John Gambell, Yale's university printer. John said he wanted to discuss with me the creation of a new processional scepter for the recently created Faculty of Arts and Sciences and their new dean, Tamar Gendler. And why is this a Rosetta Stone? The original Rosetta Stone was discovered in 1799 in Egypt by a French officer during the Napoleonic invasion. The Rosetta Stone is a fragment that holds the first ancient bilingual text recovered in modern times. That is, a bunch of hints, like the best of education, that through discipline unlocks the vast reservoirs of recorded human knowledge. I sent them images of objects I had made, among them this image of a tiered container made from sheets and rods of pewter and brass. Tamar selected us for the project and asked us to come visit because, well, it was complicated. For starters, the Faculty of Arts and Sciences has 50 departments embracing the arts, humanities, social sciences, biological and physical sciences, engineering, and applied science. The imagery on the scepter needed to embody them all. Tamar wanted the scepter to be seen at a distance as having gravitas and representing timeless stability. But up close, with a twinkle in her eye, she said to have at it with humor, irreverence, and wild curiosity. And an idea she had for the flavor of the mischievousness might start with her enjoyment of calamity wear. You're really giving me this, I said to myself. Continuing, Dean Gendler and her collaborators riffed during our first meetings on elements on the campus itself and in university writings. Among the most powerful symbol in Yale's culture is the mystical Hebrew Urim Vetumim. Now, as a member of the tribe that still uses this ancient language and that prizes skepticism over belief, this is intensely entertaining because about the Urim and the Tumim, it turns out nobody knows much of anything concerning what the Torah said were hidden within the priestly breastplate of Moses' brother Aaron. According to the Wikipedia page, they are connected with kleromancy, suspected to refer to a set of two objects used by the high priest to answer a question or reveal the will of God. Kleromancy involves drawing lots, or maybe shooting craps. So while African slaves were riffing the foundations of American jazz, Ezra Stiles and his forebears were riffing on Urim Vetumim, with the idea that it meant light and truth, in Latin, lux et veritas. Myth has it that Ezra Stiles first placed the Urim Vetumim on the Yale book, but according to the Wikipedia entry, the Hebrew on the Yale seal appears on Stiles' own master's degree diploma from Yale in 1749, decades before he became president of Yale University. What a beautiful symbol for excellence in education, a mystery that provokes curiosity and searching with no absolute answer. Other symbols at Yale were chosen, one being the stained glass Zeppelin in Sheffield Sterling Strathcona Hall. Another, the ubiquitous elm trees across the campus. And the Ankylosaurus from Rudolph Zallinger's fresco in the Peabody Museum. And stones from the Quinnipiac River bank to recognize the indigenous people whose land became Yale's. And these symbols from the Faculty of Arts and Sciences coat of arms, the cross, the ermine, and the mythical Yale beast. As the project evolved, I decided that the scepter should be made with technologies used by the ancients through today's cutting edge. Now here we enter the realm of art's role in the stories we tell ourselves. And I recalled a 1938 book by the Dutch historian Johan Huizinga, titled Homo Ludens, or Man the Player, in which Johan says, in giving expression to life, man creates a second poetic world alongside the world of nature. And I read about Dean Gendler's thinking through sections of her book, Intuition, Imagination, and Philosophical Methodology. So simultaneously, seen from a distance, here are a series of overall drawings that were experiments that eventually re-evolved to a final drawing that I'll show you in a minute. And up on the upper left, you can see this is kind of a 1950s spaceship flying saucer with the hierarchy of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, together with 50 delineated little lines underneath for the departments. And then that developed into this with a large, more funnel shape on the bottom, and then to a round one, and then a skinny round one, and then a fat round one. And for a taste of what's to come, the dean asked me to put in the points of a jester's cap. And then I came up with a final drawing from which you will see we proceeded. Up close, here are a bunch of the elements that I worked on combining into the imagery. Here's the Yale book with Urim Vetumim, and here's the shield. I messed around with this and did all kinds of things with the crosses and the ermines and the Yale mythical beast. I didn't finally use this in the end, but I used ideas from it in some other parts. And then, of course, there's the beloved Ankylosaurus that everybody seems to have special affection for. This is a cuneiform symbol for the earth. And to put that together in contemporary terms, I combined it with the Unicode number for that. Every symbol, every mark that is digitized that we see in our world has a number connected to it. So this is the number for the cuneiform Earth. And here, this triangle is also the alchemical symbol for fire, being light. So I put that in. And then here's my own incandescent bulb, now history in the world. And here's a quick drawing of the incandescent bulb with emet, the Hebrew word for truth. And then this is an LED unit. It's a little tiny bulblet that you see or that exists in almost all of the LED lights that we use today. And here's the drawing of the hierarchy, a layout of the hierarchy from the Yale website. And over here, I first experimented with figuring out numbers, the numbers of units on each level as a way of experimenting with it. And then I took it and using the more graphic way of thinking about calamity ware, I made a drawing using that. I didn't like it very much, but here it is, part of the process. And then I took these hierarchies and I started to make them into something that would be related to the mass of the final scepter. Here is a drawing of mine of the elm tree leaves that were to get put in and finally did. And here's one more iteration of the jester's point that's pretty close to what I finally used at the bottom in the end result. Here's a symbol that is on the internet for quantum mechanics, a symbol for a microchip. And here is psi, the Greek letter for quantum mechanics. When it came to music, I went and dug around and came up via Wikipedia with an ancient Chinese symbol for music. And then there's my drawing that I took from the mythical Yale beast and made my own, then not put into the final, but I felt it should be just a reminder of where we are, a small drawing of the coronavirus. Now, I took those and I arranged them on 2 rings with a variety of those things I just showed you, those elements. And you can see here's the book and the elm, the words Urim Vatumim written out in Hebrew. It's a zeppelin, this lyric symbol, Chinese kung q opera gong chi notation. It's the ankylosaurus, the earth with its Unicode and another elm tree. This is going to get wrapped around in a circle. So the book will be bound by the elm leaves on each side. And then in the smaller ring, my drawing of the light bulb, the Latin for truth, and the other elements that I showed you right here is emet in Hebrew. Now, adding to my use of cutting-edge technologies, these images were originally pixelated images. That is, up really close, they look like a checkerboard of the minuscule black and white squares that make up your computer screen. These were made into vector graphics, that is, mathematically generated curves by Nicole B. in Australia overnight via the internet. So they could be laser cut by LNA laser technology in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. So back to what I was talking about before with the form and how it related to the hierarchy, I decided to metaphorically integrate it as steps in the middle elements of the head and the tailstock. Above the widest ring, the top of the Faculty Arts and Sciences hierarchy, and below the 50 departments as a base 5 series of 10 steps in the lower Sterling bowl. Next, the dean's rings along the staff and the donor's ring at the bottom. I haven't put that in this drawing yet. Terminating as a stepped bezel for a silver spheroid counterbalance, because don't forget we're dealing with a solid object that has to be carried. And if you didn't have something to offset the weight of this, it would all flop over. So there's a little sketch about it. Here's another another one of my sketches about the Yale beast. I made a bunch of them, as you'll see in the future. I moved from drawings into the third dimension by making a half-scale model made of wood and plaster and plastic and tape. Here are the Dean's rings, and here's the counterbalance at the bottom down here. And again, I still haven't got in yet the donor's band. All right, now I'm going to show you how I built the final prototype. So these are all a bunch of parts that I cut out of a PVC board that are all going to go around that thick dowel at the bottom of the image. Here they're all stuck together. I laminated them all with glue and matching them to, you can see this drawing there on my computer in the back. So I've matched them to that to make a match. And then I started cutting them off on my own. And I couldn't help showing you this, the results of all that, with all the cuttings in the end result. And here's the final product. I'm just starting to draw the jester's points at the bottom. And there you go. Here's a part of the staff that I used. I disassembled it and assembled it with a hidden threaded rod so I can control part of the process. Here it is, the setup ready for drilling the holes for putting the Dean's rings on the staff. And there's a final of the head, and you can see these are pieces of paper that I printed out on my printer, and with all the symbols we talked about. Here's the counterbalance at the bottom with yet another drawing of the Yale beast wrapped around a spherical form. So in the end, here is the prototype profile drawing of what we're going to use to actually produce the object. Every one of these spaces is almost correct. All the profiles are corrected. Everything is just what I wanted it to be. And here is the donor's band here. Now, as you'll see, this is pretty close, but what's going to happen is I'm going to tweak them as we move along in the process. So one of the first parts of showing you how this is made is Provost Scott Strobel's steps in making the staff. Now, Scott has the wonderful gift of being able to collect pieces of wood from the Yale campus, from the trees, drying them and curing them beautifully and making them into bowls that I understand they give out as awards for Yale. So there's the first rough cut. And here's the beginning of the final cut. This is sped up, by the way. Nobody works this fast. You'd hurt yourself. And here's the final piece. Just fresh on the lathe, but done. And then here are all Scott's parts laid down next to my prototype. And they're all just perfect. Now, the next step of this is to go to have the spinning chucks put together. I'm at BAK Precision, and we're looking at the drawings that are going to be fed into the CAD/CAM system and make our chucks. There's
this piece. There's the piece right there.
Oh, there we go. So that's a profile.
That's right. Yep. So now once I was happy with this, then I dimensioned the drawings.
And Chris is doing some final finishing on this piece.
Yeah. You can cut it. It just doesn't let you file.
There we go.
You're going to have to hit it with like 600 paper with those shiny.
Good. This is great. Okay, we're moving right along here. See that?
Well, this is doing the finished cut.
Okay.
That's all it's changing to.
Is it finished cut, you said?
Yeah, see, I was getting like a little darker in color.
Yep.
But it's taking just a very light cut to give you a better finish.
I see. Is that slightly, has a slight radius, that tool?
Yeah, it's got about 15,000 degrees.
I see. That material is called phenolic, and it's made in, just like I did with my PVC boards, it's made out of like 1 inch thick pieces of phenolic, and they're bound to one another by old classical biblical linen, worked into the block and then laminated together. And here they are using that ancient stuff in this wonderful new machine. Then we took those chucks to make the sheet metal form down this hole here. And now we're going to turn into Bill's high profile places. This is not one of them. Here we are inside these places. They look like nothing outside, but here's what's inside. And there's Bill over here in the corner doing spinning. Okay. It's a little tiny bit high down here, so Bill's going to take some off. Okay, there we go. This is the beginning. See that? We're going to trim it off.
Trim the edge up a little.
Yeah.
You're going to kneel it.
Okay. It doesn't overheat one place over another. Here we go. What are too big? Okay, here's Don, and here's the pieces. Okay. Oh wow. There we go. That one's got the recesses underneath it, and this has the return on it, one side and then the other. Great. So there we are. There's the set of rings. And then we're going to the oldest of these technologies, which is hand engraving. Here's one of the spin and finish pieces, just about ready to go. And the only thing left to do on that is the engraving and the finishing of the engraving. I thought you might like to see, this is one of my own gravers. And that's my finger, and this is basically the activity that an engraver uses. He uses varieties of those little sharp-pointed steel tools to cut into the surface of a piece of metal.
This is white lacquer with India ink used to create the designs. What's interesting about these three tools is the amount of lines that they create. This one creates 1 line, this one creates 6 lines, and this one creates 12 lines. There we go. It's a long process, but when it's quiet in here, it's very enjoyable, actually. It becomes quite contemplative, and I enjoy it a lot.
And that's the final cut object with the engravings. And then I took them, and they're all raw polished metal when he first does them, and I darken them with a chemical that gives you the black in the deep areas, so it reads better. And now we're going to do the laser cutting. And then here we are finally taking it back to Don Nguyen, who is now connecting those bands, wrapping them around those rings and fastening the whole piece together. You can see here, there's a cutter up here. You see that? That's a cutter. That's a saw. Okay, very fine saw that cut this kerf. A kerf is this, the hole made with a cutter, with a saw. So that's a kerf. And he's cut that very precisely so that it matches are all around. He's put the whole things together with epoxy. And after it's done, here's the small ring. And there you can see how precise that joint is. Look right there. Isn't that amazing? Look at that. That's what's so wonderful about some of these people is they know how to do this. And they're the final pieces. Just a little bottom plate. Here's this spacer that I made for it. And then I think we're going to put some of these in here. Not big ones. Not big ones. Let's see. There we go. Let's put a few of these in here. Let's put them all in there. There we go. Okay. I'll put the top with the engraving on it in place and the acorn nut. Here's that piece. Here's the ring. There we go. Here's the reducer. Here's the second ring. And then, before we put the top on, we're going to put in the pebbles from the Quinnipiac River. We don't know how many of these have to go in here, but we're just gonna put a few in. Let's see what it takes. Okay, we're gonna put the top on the jar. And then we're going to put the cap nut on top. Just fasten it down a little bit. And there we have the mace. And there we are. So thank you for looking at it. And any questions, comments?
Howard, actually, I had a question. You know, a mace is, you know, it's a violent object. I'm just wondering, did you consider any other kind of, I mean, what other possible ceremonial objects could there be besides a mace? I'm not, I don't know. I'm not an expert on ceremonial objects. I know, for example, the president of Yale wears a hat. You know, you could have, I don't know, a shawl, or what other options might you have had besides the mace?
Well, there's the issue of what you call things. You know, they did ask me to make a mace. They
Okay.
didn't say make a mace or a cap. You know, but you know, I thought it's an interesting commentary on our society where you know, that's called a mace. You know, I mean, we could call it a bludgeon. You know, but in fact, I also came up with the idea and have changed some of the names to scepter, which is also kind of not quite right. So I don't know. It kind of floats around in there, and I don't have an answer to that, and a lot of it gets lost just in tradition of what things are called. But that scepter, the idea of somebody carrying a staff, you know, that the carrying of staffs goes, you know, I guess they're phallic symbols, and they go back to the beginning of men and women, I guess, you know, birds, ostriches, you know.
Are there other, at Yale, are there other ceremonial objects that you could compare yours to? I mean, what are some of the other colleges? What do they have? I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's interesting because when the folks there were showing me what was going on, they and the kind of options that other people used, there are all kinds of fanciful. They're all staffs, and they're all paraded, you know, in a procession like a graduation. But some are made of bent wood. There's the one from the theater department is very red colors with a face on it, if I remember. There's another one that's a classic British, you know, gold-plated casting. They're all over the place. It's very imaginative. I think I don't know, maybe there's 30 of them, you know, and this one though, Tamar Gendler happens to be the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, as I mentioned, is a top like 50 departments. She's the dean of the entire undergraduate system of Yale University. So this is a big one.
Here's a question, Howard, from David Voris. How much freedom did you have? Did Yale weigh in during the process to approve or disapprove? And finally, are they pleased with the final result?
Well, let me reverse that. First of all, we delivered it yesterday, and Dean Gendler, after I presented it to her, I did it somewhat theatrically and put everything out along with the mount that goes on her wall, and then opened it up and gave it to her last. And I could see by her body language that she was very, very pleased with it, and she walked down the hall back to her office with it, parading it along, and it looked just great. It looked just great. I have to say, one of the things that was such a pleasure is that when the people there consigned Mary and me to do this, they decided that they made a good choice. They had confidence in their choices, and they let us go. And we kept them informed and help them make progressive decisions. Like you saw that half scale mace model, and then the full scale model. Each one of them they critiqued and said, well, you know, this could be a little rounder. You know, there's not a lot of these. This is kind of flat. How about that? You know, and Mary and I took note of all that. They had a whole staff of people recording every word that was said, which is, boy, do I wish I had that. That's just great, you know. And then they would give it back to me as a complete report on the meeting, and I would digest that and put it into my next iteration. So by the time we were done, it was really all about dialogue. And to me, I really think that healthy society is based on open, respectful dialogue. And this was just super about that. I wish I could say that about our political discourse, but I can't.
Oh, here's another question. Hold on. How long was the project beginning to end? Asks William Brenner.
Hi, Bill. Well, I'll tell you, as I mentioned, it started off in the spring of 2019 with the idea that it would be first used at the end of the next academic year, 19 and 20. And of course, as I mentioned, as we all know, tragically nature had other plans for us. So it was supposed to be delivered, and it was ready to be delivered about a year after, just a year after that we took on the job. But then life happened, and here we are. I don't know. Everybody has a problem with time. How long has it been since then? 10 years? 3 years? A year? Anyway, and that was everything being in this state of suspended animation and trauma.
You may find, if she drops it and dents it, she may come back for some repairs.
Well, let me tell you, we gave them a lot of the parts that we used to make it, and then I've kept all those spinning chucks and all the dimensional information so that it can be reworked if needed. One of the things that will happen is that those whole series of they look like electrical insulators that go down. Each one of those has the dean's name. You might have caught that the first one right up near the jester's points, it has Tamar's name. And the rest of them are empty, so that each time through, it looks like it was 150 years or whatever it's going to be of deans, each one will have their name engraved on the next line below.
Here's a question from Allison Novick. Howard, bravo. Which was more powerful and or satisfying for you, thinking about the mace or creating it? That's a good question, because you're not just a craftsman, you're a liberal artist, right? It's not just the hands, it's the mind. So which was it?
Well, first thing was, I have to say, I would have to compare it to having Ali worked for us for 10 years, which was great. But it really doesn't break up that way. This is making things when you are familiar with all these languages, because all those things are languages. All those tools, all those cutters, all those gadgets, all those, they're all parts of languages. And when you learn to speak the languages well enough, they blend into one another. And I just get an enormous amount of pleasure out of every step of this. It was just a lot of fun, the whole thing.
Great. Well, Howard, really fascinating. I remember when you approached the Redwood and a mace, what, but it's been really fascinating to look and understand the journey and what a fascinating object, so loaded symbolically. And so I want to thank you for sharing it with us this evening, and also at the Redwood and displaying the mace. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I want to say one of the reasons I showed everybody all the different people and the technologies and the machines that are used in doing this. I taught as a adjunct professor, the freshman at RISD, and which was a lot of fun. But one of the things I did was I took one of my classes to the Lightolier factory in Fall River, somewhere in the neighborhood of Fall River. And we went through and seeing these people grinding and polishing and running giant pneumatic presses that were pressing these, recessed lighting reflectors. And then we all got back into the bus to go back to school. And I said, any questions, and somebody in the back raised their hand and they said, who are all those people? And I said, those are the people who make everything you have on your body, everything you drive in, everything you eat, everything you eat with, everything you made is made by people like that. And it's important for them to know that people make those things. I mean, the idea that things are made by machines, well, sure, but somebody made the machine and somebody ran the machine, and the end result, it comes down to very small human judgments. You see those guys who were making with that machine, they were making the chucks, how much conversation there was going, how much dialogue between everybody while it was finally doing it. They finally say, is this it? Is this it? And then they push the button and it goes, like that, and it does it. But it took all that conversation and dialogue to make it just right. And that happens whether it's a Q-tip or an undershirt or a tie or a pair of glasses, those people are back there.
Okay, well, Howard, thank you again. Fascinating. I want to thank everyone for listening in this evening, and I hope you will join us for next week's lecture as Dr. Edward Marquardt continues his music appreciation series with Leonard Bernstein, A Spiritual Journey, the 20th Century's Crisis of Faith. So please visit our website to register. And again, I want to thank Howard for an amazing presentation and thank all of you this evening. Thanks so much.
Thank you.